Morning, Desi.
Good morning, Chris.
Okay, so today we're going to have a conversation which we briefly sort of outlined the other day, which is how were our characters affected by in our school days? Because we were both talking about the early years, like the junior school, the first experience of school, not the infant school, but the next one, like the age around 7, 8, that kind of age, and then how that changed when we went to secondary school, like a bit older. For me, that was 11. What was it for you?
It was 14.
Okay, so basically, you've got a whole load of stuff you've already incorporated into your character, and then things change quite a lot. I mean, the it was chalk and cheese for me. I was going to a school I could walk to around the corner with a few hundred people, and then kids, as it were, and then I went to about a school of 1,000 people 4 miles away, where I only knew four people. Like so they were vastly different, and yours was a different experience. You come from a village to a big town, and which drew an audience or participation from a huge area, and it's like it was that was a massive change for you. So yeah, so tell us a little bit about the uh, the early days then. So the small school at the start with in the village. What was the setup there for you?
Well, the small village was where I grew up as a little kid, and this was a school. It was a primary school but in Bulgaria the system goes like you start school at 7. Before that, you go to kindergarten for 4 years. So when you are 7, you started first grade. And in the school that we're talking about now, it was all the way to 8th grade. But at the end of 7th grade, I went to the bigger school, which we will talk about later. So at this primary school, that's how it works in Bulgaria. So you start at 7 and you learn all your reading and writing and everything else from that age onwards. You might be a little more lucky and you might have learned how to read beforehand. But in my case, it wasn't. I was just a normal kid. Started at 7 and you know went on along. But the interesting thing was that in that same school that I went, my mum was a teacher as well. Now she didn't teach me in the first 4 years or 3 years of schooling, but then afterwards, when I was a bit older, because she was teaching the older kids, so I ended up in her classes for physics. And I remember one day very, very vividly, still remember it to now, and now I'm almost 50 years old. One day when she was examining me, because that's how it works in Bulgaria, every time you have a lesson, there's about 15, 20 minutes of examining time. So the teacher will be asking you to the front where the blackboard is, because we had blackboards in those days, and there will be a question set for you, and you either have to solve a problem on the whiteboard or you'll have to be talking about it. And I remember I didn't know the answer. And apparently, and I knew there would be a trouble follow after that because that wasn't acceptable. I had to be the model student, I had to be the model pupil, and everybody was praising me for being very clever, very, very intelligent, because I did find everything quite easy, to be honest. But in this particular occasion, it wasn't easy, and I had no clue what she was asking me about, and I didn't know the answer. So I remember her passing me in the corridor after the lesson, because it was these were like 45 minutes lessons, and then you had a little break, and then another teacher came to teach you something else. But passing in the corridor, she just passed by me, and maybe I was too sensitive. I don't know, but she was so embarrassed by what I saw and what I heard, she said, like, how dare you embarrass me in front of other people? And that really stuck into me. So um, I've worked with it now. I've dealt with this emotional trigger that was like, oh, I'm an embarrassment to my parents. Um, but also the whole of my schooling created this idea that I need to be the best. I'm not allowed to make a mistake. I I'm the top of the pecking order. Like, I'm really intelligent, and if something happens and I'm not really able to prove my intelligence, then I feel very ashamed, and I don't want to be talking about this, and I want to avoid it and do my best to actually figure it out. There is no excuse. I need to figure this out. And if I make a mistake, then how dare you make a mistake? What's wrong with you? You are intelligent. You're clever. You're the leader of the kids. Because we also I was ended up doing that as well. I don't know. In our little village, we had 30 kids in the classroom. It was quite a thriving village. It gathered children from the two neighboring villages as well. But we were quite a big school in those days. Nowadays, it's a bit, I don't know. They're lucky they have 11 kids altogether in the whole school. And when I was there, it was eight classes, 8 year groups. Each one had about 30 kids, so you can imagine it was quite a nice size school. And then the big problem came. Right now, you want to go and study English in the big school in the big town. You need to sit for an exam, Bulgarian literature exam. Well, that was one of the subjects that I really didn't like, and I wasn't very good at it because maths was easy because there was an answer, like you keep saying, Chris. It's either right or wrong, so I can manage that. But with English, oh my goodness, I could never with Bulgarian literature, I could never figure out how to actually express myself so it's acceptable, because there was all multiple ways of expressing yourself, and most of them that I that when I wrote, most of them weren't considered good enough. And that's what happened to this exam. It wasn't good enough, especially in the eyes of my mum. Whoa, what's wrong with this? Like, how could you? You're never gonna get into school now. Look at this test result. It's horrible. So forget about the school. That was the summer holidays. Forget about the school. You're never gonna get in. There's so many clever children in the big town, and you come from this little village. Nah, forget. And with this result, no way. And then about a month later, there comes the news that I've been accepted. And then there was the joy, and but I don't know whether I really was so happy, because I still had this thing in my head that I'm ashamed from the result that was horrible, so poor, like almost like a failure. It was just scraped it. I scraped it in, um, and then from there on, I felt like I always had to prove myself that I deserve to be in the school, that I need to be, that I'm in the right place because I have done enough. And then from a small school where I was the top of the leaderboard, so to say, and I was the leader of the pioneers, and then the komsomol's, or some people would not know what this is. This is the youth organizations. From being that, I'm being praised for being very intelligent, and you can't fault me in any way, to a school which is we just the English learning classes. We were five in the year group, and then there was two classes of German and two classes of French. So it was a huge school. And in this school, I knew nobody, and I had never studied English before. All of them had already had a year of English in their previous smaller schools, their primary schools. and they had a little bit of a head start. And I go there with nothing because I had studied French. Yeah, it took me about, I don't know, 2 years to actually catch up and be comfortable in my new environment. The first year was a complete, I don't know how I even managed to get over it and to go through it, but that was when it was the most intense English studying. And the teacher that I had in in that year, she said, "Don't worry about not knowing English at all, because by the end of the first term, nobody will know. Everybody will be on the same level. Even those who actually knew English and you who didn't, you're going to be on the same level anyway. So don't worry about it. You'll catch up." Oof, was it a big catch up? It was such tough year. Yeah, it was very, very tough. Um, so by the end of so that was the preparatory. So I lost a year in like a big scheme of things compared to my friends who stayed in the primary school and then went from the next grade 8 onwards to the next school. So I lost a year in this way because we were learning catching up with English. But then after that, year 8 and eighth grade and ninth grade, I think in ninth grade, I started feeling comfortable, like I was in my own waters now. I'd proven myself. By that time, I had proven myself that
So
I was
you saying
intelligent like before.
so you saying that instead of changing your mindset, you just tried to get back to where it was at
I
the
had no idea about mindset in those days. I
no,
only
I know,
know
but
about mindset now.
looking back on it, you must have had coping mechanisms to deal with this change from being the most intelligent to what you would perceive as now like almost substandard. How do you cope with that as a kid? So what did you do?
I was just never having any break. I just kept learning and learning and practicing, 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 and I wouldn't stop. And even when my parents, because that was in the, I lived with my grandparents in the big city where the school was. And by the way, guys, if you're watching this, there will be you will find a video of this place. We've we've made a little like 2-3 minute video about where that place is, the school and that. So I used to live with my grandparents, and my parents would come to visit me on the weekend, um, because they drove and they could just get in the car and come over, and it's not too far. But um, and when they come to visit us on the weekend, they didn't really see much of me because I was always reading, learning, solving problems. Because in the first year it was English all through, but then there was also after that there was English was constant because it was an English school. English was a constant presence and it needed to be at a high level, but also we had maths, we had chemistry, we had like the normal set of A level or GCSE kind of
Hmm.
studies going on as well. So my mum would tell, "Well, I can't even see you constantly solving problems. I thought you didn't like maths." So yeah, well, I didn't like maths before, but now I like it because it's actually starting to make sense now that I've put all these hours and hours and hours and hours of learning. It's now making sense.
So I mean
How was your
I was
situation? Yeah.
it was a similar scenario. I was going to a school which is close to my parents, as you do when you're young, and I was this was from the age of like 7 to 11, so it was 4 years. It was 4 years, I
Mm-hmm.
think, and yeah, I mean, I liked it. There was I was with some guys from my club, my street where I used to live. There's only like 18 houses, and there were three of us from there, and yeah, it was. I found it all quite easy. I was like galloping ahead with the maths books and stuff, and with this guy that was from my street, and he was very very good with computation in his brain. You could give him like what 6,088 times 7,320, and he'd give you an answer within seconds. He just he just had a gift for doing calculations.
Mm.
So he was probably the best at the maths. But then he went to a local school afterwards, and I went to Watford Grammar, which was and in the UK we had a grammar school system where those people, it was like a streamlining, and the people who were, it wasn't it wasn't a paid for school. That was private schools. So that was
It's still now working. It's still grammar schools
yeah, I
nowadays.
mean, you still have grammar schools. It kind of brought them back a little bit, but it was like you had comprehensive schools, which were kind of more generic for, and they streamlined there too. But the grammar schools kind of attract the more the
It's
brighter ones. They did a 11 plus exam to get.
academic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did an 11 plus exam to get in. I didn't have to do that because my brother did it. So they were all talking about this 11 plus exam, all the people at the new school. And I was talking, and I was like, "What are you talking about?"
You missed it.
Exactly. And you could have that could have been perceived as, "Oh, I didn't do it. Then maybe I'm not as good as those people." But I never looked at it like that. I was like, "Well, my brother did it. He got in," and I'm like, well, and I considered myself more intelligent than him. So it's like, well, if he could pass it, I'll do it
Or it
in my
means like,
sleep.
oh, he was stupid. He passed it. I can just.
I could get in without any problem. I was
It's
like, I
just
could,
because he was earlier. He was older than me.
yeah, there was never any doubt that I would have passed the test in my mind. It was like I just didn't have to go and do it. Um, so, but at the junior school, I was like, a bit teacher's pet, this kind of thing. So although it wasn't my parents, the teacher really liked me, and like she was always very positive about things. So and then I got into Watford Grammar, but then at Watford Grammar, they didn't play. I was pretty good at football. When I was in the junior school, we never lost a football match. We only ever drew one in 2 years, and we won the championship 2 years running. And I was in the team, and so I was pretty confident with myself at that point. And then went to go to Watford Grammar, and I'm like, suddenly don't know anybody, middle of the road. They don't play any sport alike. So suddenly it's like, oh, they don't play football. Oh, that's a bit of a bummer. And then, bloody hell, these people seem to know a lot of stuff, more than what I kind of do, kind of thing. And it was like, oof, maybe I'm not as intelligent as I thought I was, type of thing. And then, so from a character perspective, you have to eat a little bit of humble pie and realise that, you know, and then I started to appreciate the academic qualifications in terms of your presence within a community is not the be all and end all. It's not everything, because you have to be able to talk to people, you have to be able to socialize, you have to be able to, and actually almost like being an all rounder
Hmm.
was a more pleasant experience. And I kind of worked this out quite quickly that I was going to go to this school to pass exams. I really couldn't give a monkey's what the grades were. My job here was to pass,
Hmm.
and that's what I did.
So your job was to pass, so you have fun and you just do as minimum as
Yeah,
you
whatever
can,
I needed to
whatever's
do.
needed to pass. And mine was the other way around. Mine was to prove myself that I'm worthy of being a student at this school.
Hmm. Well,
And I didn't even realize that that was what I was doing until when later on I was looking at my situation because of something else that happened, and I was reassessing and reevaluating my whole life.
and I mean, when you look at it and the reports, I mean, you were a school teacher, so you were writing reports, and you write reports about the academic progress, if you like. And my academic progress wasn't really very good. It was Chris always does enough to get by. When you think about it, that's exactly what I was doing, and I didn't know at the time really that that's what I was doing. But what I was also doing was mixing in things that I enjoyed doing, like table tennis, playing for the county, and I was I was spending every night playing table tennis, not doing homework. You know, like
Mm.
the net effect of me doing all this was to play table tennis at a fairly decent standard. I enjoyed the table tennis. It was in what it gave me from a perspective of sport, striving for things, knowing that you can only get success with commensurate effort, and you need to be consistent and doing it regularly and without these are all things that
Like character building things,
yeah,
yeah.
these are all things that you have to do in life, but you don't get taught them at school. And when I look at what the teacher writing the report and the parents reading the report, and then what they say to the child as a result of reading the report, is really quite interesting concept to think about, because
Mm.
it's just from well, oh, okay, there is social skills and stuff now in the reports as well, like, oh, he's good with the other kids and blah 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 blah.
That's what we start with, yeah, how they are
Yeah,
interacting, the kids.
yeah. So there is a bit of that in there now, but I'm sure that it's heavily weight. That almost the parents skip through that. It's like, and then they get on to the meat and veg, don't they? Like, how you doing? How you really doing? Like, all that's flowery, nice stuff, and yeah, it's great you get on with everyone. But let's look at how you're doing with maths
Mm.
and how you doing with the physics. You know, how you doing with all this other in English and all this other stuff. And I'm wondering what the impact on the kid is with that, because my nowadays it's so different. Like, the the school plays a much greater part in the role of the child than it ever used to in my day. I mean, like in my day, if I got put in detention, I got put in detention at home with my mum and dad as well, because they said, we're not going to show us up at school. So I'd get twice as bad at home as I got at school. And nowadays, if there's some problem with the child, the parents go down there and have a go at the teachers, right? Whereas,
Mm. Yeah.
whereas in my day, they'd be standing behind, not defending me, supporting the teacher, saying, "Exactly, we keep telling him this as well." Like,
Mm.
I get double dose,
It's
right?
interesting nowadays that the teachers get the brunt of everything. So first of all, they're supposed to be teaching the child, and
Mm.
then and also educating the child in terms of life skills as well. Because there was a talk about that's a funny one, the government putting on to teachers to teach children how to brush their teeth as well. It was a bit of a joke, but yeah, it was mentioned a few years ago. Um, so children spend the majority of their day in the school environment and only meeting their parents in the evening, if just maybe just before they go to bed. And so the main responsibility for the upbringing of this child lies solely, well, 90% on the school. And yet the parents have this audacity to come and give it all to the school and like saying the school is not doing their job. Well, do the job yourself then.
Yeah, I
We
mean,
teachers
it is.
never wanted to take the role of the parents. It just dumped on them all the time, like more and more responsibilities being given on to teachers, and
I
it's not
mean,
right.
this is a slightly different subject than the one that
Yeah, we
we
need
were
to
going to talk. But like,
digress.
yeah, but the way it affected me was like, I kind of, when my parents said, let's have a look at this report, and like the discussion between me and my parents about that report were nigh on negligible. They were like, oh, it's the same as last time. You got to try harder. You could do much better than you're doing at the moment. Blah blah blah. And I'd say, yeah, I know, but like, I don't want to spend all my time doing homework. And on the weekends, I'm working on Saturdays and Sundays because I like that job and it gives me a bit of money. And actually, I need that because that empowers me to do things I want to do. And I don't want to spend all my time. So yeah, but you've got all the and actually, when you look at it, what happened with my schooling? Well, I came out with 3 A levels and 9 O levels, which is exactly what I wanted to come out with. Right, so I got exactly what I wanted. They weren't the best grades, but no one ever looked at those pieces of paper ever again. They just asked me how many exams did I pass. That was it. That was the only question. No one ever checked them. No one ever looked at those pieces of paper. So it wasn't important, was it? It was just not important. And
Mm.
and I came out with those exams. So basically, ticking the box, achievement, successful, and and as a result of that, I went on and did what I wanted to do and enjoyed my life. Like, at the end of the day, the character, what the school did was it made me evaluate what was important in life,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to pick up on that. And what I did may have not been a conscious decision, but looking back on it, those decisions were made, and they were the right ones for me. And I wouldn't have had it any other way. I was an all rounder, really. I mean, I could have a conversation with people. I was clever enough to be able to put my argument forward, and I was able to develop my logical thinking, and I was exposed to computers in a very rudimentary early stage. Everything that was required was delivered,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw it and took it. People accuse me of treating the school like Tesco's. Come in, you just take what you want and go. I said, well, you create the system. I'm just taking advantage of it. It's not. I didn't build the system. I said, what do you expect me to do? Because I wouldn't be a prefect, going around like a policeman at the school. I said, I didn't want to be a policeman. It's like it's not what I'm going for to be a policeman. If you want to police these kids in the playground at lunchtime, you do it. I'm not doing it. It's not in the contract.
Mm.
But anyway, but like, so in your sense, what, how did it, was it a positive thing for your character? I mean, like, obviously you've gone through that. Learning English was really important because it enabled you to have the flexibility to come to England, for example.
Yeah.
Like, so your that suggestion and stuff led to other things which you had no idea it was going to lead to, but it did lead to other things. Um, but did you package up your school experience in some way which you feel has given you a, a life approach that's worked for you, or
Well,
not really?
that's what happened. I was, like I said, I was constantly proving myself
Mm.
that I am worthy of, you name it. So I
I,
had to constantly prove myself because I didn't believe I deserved any of
so this
this.
comes so this comes down to then the parent thing is like there was a constant need or feel for you to prove yourself to
I had my
meet
parents
their
very heavily involved in my life.
so they were there to you were there trying to prove yourself that you were worthy and could meet their expectations.
They had this idea that I am very intelligent and I can't do anything wrong, and I had to prove that.
Yeah, I mean,
Somehow, this was my perception of it. And if I were to ask them today, why did you do that? They'll probably say, what are you talking about? They would think that they've done an amazing job as parents, which is probably also true because um, how I perceived it is completely my perception,
I mean, this is a thing for another
Yeah,
discussion. But what I'm saying, what your parents are measuring themselves against, is the things that were put into their personas, and you were being measured by the measurements that they built through their life, which were imposed by their parents, probably.
yeah.
So this is very generational. But I think the question is they weren't the full product. They didn't have things in their portfolio. Like my parents didn't have this school teacher persona in there. They weren't looking. They weren't looking. They thought that we were all that. Well, they didn't think my sister was particularly bright because that's what the school system told them,
Hmm.
but she's done well for herself. My brother's done well for himself. Made his own way in his life, and I've done what I want to do in my life so far. I've achieved things, but they didn't say which direction that ought to go in. They didn't put any rules on that. They basically
Well,
said,
yeah.
"Go
Hmm.
try stuff and see what you like."
My thing was, you need to go and do this because you need to be better than those children.
Okay, so
There
it's a
was always
comparison.
a comparison involved.
Yeah.
and I needed to prove myself that I'm better than these kids. And I didn't want to be proving myself all the time because I wanted to be friendly with people. And if I was constantly being told that I'm better than them, and how am I going to face them as being my friend? So this
Yeah,
is where I started playing small. Like
yeah, that's what I was
when
going to say. Yeah.
when they were when we had an exam or some kind of a test paper, and I always had the full marks. Well, almost always, say probably 99%. And sometimes I'll have a small mistake here and there. And when I had a small mistake, it was a big celebration. Look, I've not done it right. I've made a mistake. Look, I'm
Even
just
Jesse
like
got this
you.
one wrong. It's like I'm vindicated.
And I hear nowadays some of them say, "Oh, we had to measure ourselves against you, and if you did it wrong, it was a celebration because yay, we
You got it
also
wrong too.
she got it wrong, so I'm okay." So it was a constant struggle for me to be able to be with my okay with my parents who wanted me to be the best, and also be okay with my friends who I didn't want to be the best because I wanted to be like them. And there was this constant confusion in my head, like, do I do okay? Is it safe for me to show off as a super successful person or not? Oh, what is my mom gonna say about this? Oh, what is my dad gonna say about this? Oh, what is my friend gonna say about this?
Yeah, I mean, but that's quite, like, now looking back, that's quite a lot of baggage for a kid to be dealing with, isn't it? Like, it's like all this, yeah, how do I navigate my way through keeping my parents happy and yet still retaining these friendships at school, which are really important to me?
But it was also the teachers, all the other teachers. They thought I could never do anything wrong because they thought I was the most amazing person.
Mm.
Even if I made a mistake, apparently nowadays, nowadays, a few years ago, my mom says, "Oh, they still think that you're amazing. You can't do anything wrong."
Yeah, she doesn't. The reality is that probably she doesn't think that anymore. But
No, 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 those other people, because she's friends with them. They're all
yeah, no,
colleagues.
no. But what
They're
I'm saying is that your mum probably doesn't think that. She's probably knocking you in front of them. Oh no, she's not.
oh
Don't,
yeah. And now she says, "Oh, she's doing these stupid things. She's quit her job." And
don't
she's
believe it.
relying on the government system for and she's not willing to go and get herself a job. Oh, I don't want to get a job. I want to do my own thing, and it's not an ego thing. It's just I had enough of doing other people's things.
Yeah, doing what other people want you to do. Yeah, but it is interesting because you can see how this school environment created the person you are. You may not like it, you might be changing it, or you might be coming to terms with it 30 years on. But what I'm saying
Mhm.
is that the rudiments of all these things are laid in these school years, and we just don't really give them enough attention. What was going actually, and be honest with ourselves. Like I was very egotistical. Oh yeah, bloody hell, look at that. And like honestly admitting it.
Mm,
And because that's the only way you can deal with these things. I mean, this is not a, like some kind of um,
psychotherapy.
therapy session. I'm just saying, it's like when you look back at these things, if you're honest with yourself, you can see where the foundations were laid and why you became the person you are. And I find it amazingly fascinating. I find it
Yeah,
personally,
it is.
I find this is like the answer to the problems you've got because here is where it's laid. And it's like, please, I was doing this when I was 8. Why the hell am I still doing it at 16? Why? I'm not the same kid as I was then, and I'm still dragging that bag of rubbish around with me.
It's painful though, having to accept this and seeing how, like in my case, I had to prove myself constantly that I deserve this and I deserve that and I'm worthy of being loved.
But the only person who needs to prove it to self is to you, and the only person that needs to really love you is you. It's like,
Yeah, but it wasn't like nobody told me that.
I don't know.
Nobody told me this, and as if I didn't even feature in the whole equation.
Doing things to please other people is a video that we did yesterday. Doing things and wearing these masks because it creates a situation where you can move with confidence or ease within other people. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, why are we pandering to all these other people's needs to run our lives? Why are we doing that? And if you're interested in that, then watch the video from yesterday, which was which is where is that on Patreon and YouTube?
Well, it's gonna be in dark places
Yeah.
probably.
Anyway, that's probably done
All
this to
right.
death, really.
Thank you for
Interesting,
watching.
interesting
Interesting
conversation.
to see if you had any different experience to ours, because obviously we're just two people, two examples, but there will be as many examples as there are humans on this
People,
planet, and
yeah, everyone's got a unique.
everybody's different.
Yeah,
And how
definitely.
you navigate through that is also, like we were talking in the before we started recording, like there are so many solutions to this as there are people, because that's why we can't say, we can't give advice. We can only help give an example and give our perspective, and then you have all the answers in yourself. You just need to find them.
Hmm. Okay,
All right.
so thanks for watching and see you soon.